in the properties of the hammer.
Interesting theory. May I keep it for study? You're not going to play with it or anything.
No, I won't.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to episode 69 of the podcast devoted to the classic and sometimes not so classic genre cinema of yesteryear. This is Bride of Monster Kid Radio, and the song that you're hearing right now is Punishing the Atoms. It's from the band Los Twangheads on their album The Dark Surf Experience. You can find out more about them over at lostwangheads.bandcamp.com. Check them out. Let them know that you heard about them here on Bride of Monster Kid Radio, and I'm super excited actually because according to their Facebook page just a couple of days ago, they posted that they are working on some brand new music. So get caught up on what they've done before with this album with the Dark Surf Experience. My name is Derek M. Cook. I am the writer, host, and producer of this here show. Excited to have you here this week. Thanks for tuning in, downloading, streaming, watching on YouTube, however it is you consume this show. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. This week on the show, we're going to get some Edgar Ulmer action going on here. Now, we've talked about Ulmer, at least some of his films, his film output, that sort of thing, kind of, sort of, a little bit in the past, a little bit. But we're going to dive a little deeper into some Edgar Ulmer fun with two movies. We're looking at Beyond the Time Barrier and The Amazing Transparent Man. It's a double feature. You know what that means. Let's bring in Matt Rashley to talk about it. We have a good time talking about these double features, and while it's not the only thing I ever want to talk to Matt about, it's kind of become a thing that we do, and I love doing it. And you know what? I love these movies. There's one that I love an awful lot. An awful lot. And you're going to hear about that later on when Matt and I talk about these films. Now, there is a look at Famous Monsters of Filmland thanks to Kenny this week here on the show. I would like to say the thoughts and opinions of the articles that Kenny references in the look at Famous Monsters of Filmland, no, they don't necessarily reflect the thoughts and opinions of me or Bride of Monster Kid Radio. But you know what? Opinions can vary. It's a good segment, though, and I love going back and hearing what maybe not more contemporary reviewers. I don't know if that's really accurate, but just to kind of see the journey that some of these movies go on from the time they were released to their revival to now, you know, what we think of them, that sort of thing. So I think it's a great segment. So thank you, Kenny, for putting that together. Also, Mark Matzke's Beta Capsule review with another episode of Ultraman Taro. We're going through every single episode of every single I'm so excited. I stumbled over my words. Every single series of Ultraman. I still want to do an Ultraman watch party at some point, and, you know, that'll happen later this year probably. But in the meantime, keep up with what's going on with Ultraman with the Beta Capsule review with Mark Matzke, which we're going to get to, right after this.
Daughter of Dr. Jekyll, yearning for love and discovering on the eve of her marriage the monstrous inheritance that was her birthright of fear.
Oh, I still shudder when I recall that face, like some perverted mask of evil out of a legend of horror.
Then you saw him, Miss Hyde?
Once, at the very last, just before the mob caught him. They almost tore him to pieces. The villagers broke into this tomb and drove a stake through his heart.
Daughter of Dr. Jekyll, terrified that she become the disfigured thing that was her father, a vampire drawing sustenance from bestiality.
I've got to get a stake and drive it through my heart and bury me beside my father.
If you love me, please kill me.
What is the fourth dimension?
Time.
Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer presents
the first motion picture that dares to explore the fourth dimension.
The Time Machine.
The picture that smashes the time barrier.
That takes you on an adventure into the fourth dimension, into time.
800,000 years into the future.
The Time Machine.
H.G. Wells' most astounding tale
of prophecy of things to come.
The Time Machine.
Rocketing you through the ages faster than the speed of light.
To unknown worlds of tomorrow.
The Time Machine.
You'll see excitement that thrills.
You'll feel suspense that screams.
You'll know terror that stuns the mind.
You are there with a world of flame around you.
See on the giant screen in blazing color.
The Time Machine.
Live from the Land of Light in Nebula M78, home of the mighty Ultra Heroes, it's Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review. Ultraman Taro, Episode 27. Here he is, Alien Mephiles. Original air date, October 5th, 1973. As Kenichi's baseball team prepares for an upcoming tournament, they're joined by a new ace pitcher named Fumio, whose nickname is Kaiju. Kotaro treats the team to juice from a strangely out-of-place vending machine, and the unintended consequence is disastrous. A vine shoots out of the machine and pricks Fumio's leg, rendering him unable to stand. Fumio is hospitalized and treated for polio symptoms until a staff doctor makes a stunning diagnosis. Fumio is afflicted with mandarin disease, which can only be treated with the flower of the mandarin plant, which, by all accounts, has gone extinct. Thus begins a worldwide search for the relict plant. Meanwhile, more children are being infected and adults are disappearing. Things come to a head when ZAT blows up the vending machine, revealing an old enemy, Alien Mephiles, who is fused with the mandarin plant in an evil plot to weaken the children of Earth. When Mephiles threatens to destroy the very hospital where Fumio is being treated, ZAT must decide how to deal with the alien whose connection to the mandarin plant holds the key to potentially healing Fumio. Here he is, Alien Mephiles, continues a winning streak of strong episodes, this time incorporating the sport of baseball, a major touchstone of Japanese culture. Baseball arrived in Japan in 1872, introduced by American teacher Horace Wilson. High school baseball became a national obsession, with the establishment of the Koshien tournament in 1915. Broadcast nationwide, it continues to be one of Japan's most watched sporting events, and it's the Koshien tournament that Fumio dreams about playing in, holding on to an official Koshien baseball throughout his hospitalization. When the baseball team shows up to the hospital to visit Fumio, it's a truly heartwarming scene, emphasizing the power of teamwork to encourage and give hope. Throw in the reappearance of fan-favorite Alien Mephiles, introduced in the 33rd episode of the original Ultraman series, and viewers are treated to another home run from the creators of Ultraman Taro. For Bride of Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review, this is Mark Matzke reporting.
The only good human is a dead human.
The bizarre world you met on the planet of the apes was just the beginning. What lies beneath may be the end. 20th Century Fox takes you beneath the planet of the apes. This is the year 3955 AD. The apes are building a war machine aimed at planet domination. Superhuman mutants strike back with new and terrifying weapons of the mind. In the atomic rubble of what was once the city of New York, civilization's final battle is about to begin.
The only good human is a dead human.
Beneath the planet of the apes, with James Franciscus, Kim Hunter, Maurice Evans, Linda Harrison, and Charlton Heston. Can a world long endure half ape, half man? The answer lies deep beneath the planet of the apes. In color, rated G, general audiences.
The Monster Bash convention is coming your way fast. It's the gathering of monster movie fans from all around the country with a film festival, guest movie and TV stars, and vendors of collectibles, plus writers and artists. The Monster Bash convention is June 12th through the 14th, 2026 at the Pittsburgh Marriott North. You can meet and chat with actor Gary Conway, the Teenage Frankenstein, in movies from the 1950s. He also appeared in Land of the Giants, Burke's Law, and so much more. It's Butch Patrick from the original Munsters TV show. Get an autograph from this television icon. Daniel Roebuck will be there, happy to meet you. He was Grandpa in the most recent Munsters movie and is one of the greatest memorabilia collectors in the world. Plus a director, writer, and producer of fantastic family films. Director and writer Jack Hill will appear. He was the last person to direct Boris Karloff in films, known for writing and directing the cult movie classic Spider Baby. Actress Beverly Washburn, a fan favorite, will appear at Monster Bash. She starred in Spider Baby, Disney's Old Yeller, Boris Karloff's Thriller TV show, Star Trek, and many more. Producer Bill Diamond will have a massive Muppet display as he worked on many Jim Henson projects and has original Muppets to showcase in an immersive setup. Plus, he's the man behind the documentary series on artist Basil Gogos of Famous Monsters magazine. And it doesn't stop there. Marriott McKnight, a former Miss America, will be at Monster Bash, along with Ohio TV legendary horror host Son of Ghoul, and low-budget monster movie maker David the Rock Nelson will perform a live magic show on stage. Film Fest, movie and TV stars, wall-to-wall collectible vendors. It's Monster Bash, June 12th through the 14th, 2026 at the Pittsburgh Marriott North. Go to the website to see so much more. monsterbash.us. That's monsterbash.us. It's where monster fans converge for the super expo of entertainment.
Hello there, Bride of Monster Kid radio heads. This is Kenny with a look at Famous Monsters of Filmland. Today we are looking at the films of Edgar Ulmer, with a focus on The Amazing Transparent Man and Beyond the Time Barrier. First, let's take a look at a brief mention of Beyond the Time Barrier in FM 94, in an article about surprise endings. Spoiler warning. According to Beyond the Time Barrier, humanity was again destined for annihilation. Mankind was doomed. But the mutants who would survive the atomic holocaust might develop as our ancestors did. The last camera shot was of a jet pilot who had aged greatly because he had journeyed forward and backward in time. Mr. Ulmer passed away in September of 1972, and FM paid tribute to him in FM 102 from October of 1973. Death Takes horror director. Ulmer directed Karloff and Lugosi. Edgar Allan Poe wrote The Black Cat. Edgar George Ulmer interpreted it for the screen. He collaborated on the story and directed the universal version of 1934, with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi pitted against each other in a tale as horrifying as The Pit and the Pendulum. The Black Cat was re-released as The Vanishing Body, and in England it was known as House of Doom. In 1920, when the Lon Chaney of Europe, Paul Wegener, played the great clay creature brought to life in the alchemical days of ancient Prague, Edgar Ulmer was there, assisting the chief cameraman, so probably some of the frames of The Golem was shot by him as a young man of 20. He was born in Vienna in 1900 and died in Los Angeles in October 1972. When the great demonic German fantasy Faust was filmed, the late Mr. Ulmer was assistant to the famous director F.W. Murnau. known to all buffs of the Baroque as the director of the silent vampire classic Nosferatu. John Carradine was directed by Mr. Ulmer in Bluebeard, the 1944 horror story of the psychopathic French killer, which also featured Nils Astor, star of The Man in Half Moon Street, one of the better films about longevity. In 1959, Ulmer directed A Poor Man's Invisible Man in The Amazing Transparent Man, unfortunately forgettable. In 1950, on his way to the future and beyond the time barrier in 1960, he paused to direct The Man from Planet X. Regrettably, the script did not offer much to direct, but Ulmer did his best. Critic Andrew Sarris once said of him, "Ulmer's camera never falters, even when his characters disintegrate." Of course, one of his characters was called on to disintegrate in Daughter of Dr. Jekyll, 1957, though surprisingly it wasn't the scientist's daughter who meddled with things man was meant to leave alone, but kindly old character actor Arthur Shields, who turned out to be Dr. Vampire and Mr. Werewolf. Finally, in 1961, Ulmer made his last film, Journey Beneath the Desert, the second remake of L'Atlantide. I never saw the early silent version, but the 1932 sound film, even with Brigitte Helm from Metropolis as the irresistible Queen of Atlantis, has to be one of the most boring films of any sort I have ever seen. Sorry about that, but it's true. Mr. Ulmer was the production designer and co-director of the latest version to date, and to be frank, I heard such bad things about it that I didn't feel it worth my while to stay up as late as I would have to do in order to catch it on TV. But if, like Atlantis, Ulmer sank into obscurity with his last film, his brilliant Black Cat remains a lasting tribute to his talent. At the time of its release, Film Daily said of the film, "In the same category with Frankenstein and Dracula, this Edgar Allan Poe horror picture brings together for the first time Karloff and Lugosi. It carries a terrific air of weird unreality and impending calamity that will satisfy the most ardent thrill hunter. So let us not dwell on Ulmer's less than overwhelming works, but salute his memory for the classic he left us. Au revoir till the next revival of your Black Cat, Edgar G. Ulmer." That is all for this week's look at Famous Monsters of Filmland. We will have more next time. For BMKR, this is Kenny saying adios.
This is Count Dracula, and I'm here to offer you a friendly warning. Derek and his guests often get excited, and occasionally this results in revealing key plot points of the movies they're discussing. You know how the children of the night, monster kids, can get sometimes. So consider yourself warned. And don't come begging to me to kill them for their transgressions afterward. I have more pressing issues to take care of, like that pesky Van Helsing.
When a good friend of yours just posts kind of randomly that he's been watching a lot of Edgar Ulmer films, you jump on that chance to talk about Edgar Ulmer films on the podcast, especially since he's a Monster Kid Radio irregular. One of my oldest friends, one of my best friends, actually, Matt Rashley, is back, and he's got Ulmer in his back pocket. I mean, not literally, but you know what I mean. Matt, how you doing?
Good, Derek. Good. It's good to be here with you again, and excited to talk about Mr. Ulmer.
I am super stoked, especially since we're going to focus specifically on 1940s Goodbye, Mr. Germ, an animation that he made for the National Tuberculosis Association. No, we're not going to focus on that, but I think that's funny that he did do, not funny, but interesting, that he was all over the map with the kinds of things that he did, including this little 15-minute short about the dangers of, germs. And this is just an example of his desire, his drive to make stories, make films, make movies. A lot of it was work for hire, sure, but I mean, he was all over the map doing this stuff, and it's awesome. Literally, I mean, he did stuff for the English language. He did stuff for the Yiddish audience. He was all over the place here, and I love it.
Yeah, everything from helping build sets for Metropolis to making women prison movies later on. Like, Ulmer covered a lot of ground.
And I got to take this from a panel recording that you sent me from the Horrible Imaginings convention back in 2015. I think it was the year on that, where they pointed out that, yeah, he did do a woman in prison movie. And this predates the proliferation of women in prison movies from the 70s and 80s. This is something that he did back in the day. So I think it's interesting. He did a Karloff Lugosi film, one of the best non-monster, I guess I'm going to say. It doesn't have Frankenstein, doesn't have Dracula, whatever, but it's one of the best horror films from the classic Universal era with the Black Cat. So he directed that. He also directed what many consider to be one of the absolute best film noir films of all time with Detour. Directed a couple of movies that we're going to focus on a little bit today. But before we dive into The Amazing Transparent Man and Beyond the Time Barrier, I thought it'd be nice just to kind of talk a little bit about the man. We've talked about Ulmer a little bit here on the show in the past, but we're going to talk about him again. He's the king of the B movies, according to a couple of different sources, so why not?
Yes, King of the Bees, Prince of Poverty Row.
Yep.
He did a lot of things.
His history with film does predate him coming to America.
He was working in Germany with, Fritz Lang and Billy Wilder, a lot of different people. Late in his life, when his health was in decline, he'd done a couple interviews, and it sounds like he may have stretched the truth or had different memories than what may have occurred, but there's no doubt that he was prolific, and his career ran for decades through some of the most important eras of the golden era, but also all those German and Austrian filmmakers who were fleeing the Third Reich, who came here and changed Hollywood forever in the way that I think with Ulmer, you can really see that German expressionist influence in his work, especially, the stuff in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Like The Black Cat, it was a first-time watch for me.
Oh, really?
And I was blown away. I mean, not only if you're a fan of Karloff or Lugosi or both, it's a must-watch. The two of them are just so captivating and compelling. But the sets and the way it was lit and the way it was set, like, it looks like an art house film. It's really stunning. I know that you've done shows about it before.
Oh, with episode 666 of Monster Kid Radio before the rebrand, 4-hour hiatus, which makes sense because it is kind of a satanic-ish movie. There's some stuff in there. It's really cool, though. You can tell the expressionism influence. Well, Ulmer went to school for architecture, and you can see that in the way he builds with light and designs with light and shadow in things like The Black Cat. And I would say even in Beyond the Time Barrier we're going to talk about, there's a lot of it there too, although some of that might have been accidental. But yeah, The Black Cat is such a stunning film. Karloff, Lugosi playing against type, which is great. You get Lugosi early in his Universal run, well, not really a run, but early in his 30s career doing something other than playing the villain, which is fantastic. I know Lugosi got typecast as Dracula and kind of struggled with that through a lot of his career. But when you look at The Black Cat, you can see he was capable of so much more. And I love him in this. It's one of my favorite Lugosi performances. Karloff is just delightful in that film as well. And I got to tell the story. I asked her about what her favorite film was of her father's. And then she asked me what my favorite Karloff film was. And I said, it's probably The Black Cat. And she shot back immediately with, oh, so you like seeing my father get skinned alive, huh? And it's like, come on. I mean, it's not necessarily, but he's so dastardly great in that film. It's just a wonderful flick. And Ulmer made it special.
Yeah, the nuance that Bela brings to the role, I think, is probably his finest, in the sense that there was many dimensions to him, and you could see it. And I've always thought Lugosi probably doesn't get the credit for being a fine actor because of his accent and because he's played Dracula, even though he steals the energy of every shot in Dracula. Like he owns that picture.
Yeah.
And it made him who he was. But I don't think he gets enough credit for being a really great actor. If you watch The Black Cat, you can see so much going on behind the eyes.
Yeah.
Like there's so much planning and thought and a lot of things that I think that is very modern that is very current for what audiences want and expect out of performances now.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever thought ahead of its time is a phrase I would associate with Lugosi, but I could see a little bit of that. You're absolutely right.
At least in The Black Cat.
Yeah, yeah.
With that material.
The man had range, and I know that at one point in his career, and I think a lot of them did this, Chaney did the same thing, Lon Chaney Jr., where at some point they're like, I'm capable of doing more than the monster movies. I want to be the Clark Gable. I want to be the romantic lead. And Lugosi had the look. I think maybe the accent held him back. Maybe the journey to become more Americanized and more acceptable to a more mainstream general audience was harder for Lugosi because of the accent, because of where he came from, right or wrong. But Lugosi was capable of some incredible range. And you see a lot of it in The Black Cat.
And of course, anytime for me when I get to see Karloff and Lugosi together, the Monster Kid movie geek inside me explodes. Like, it's so much fun. The one thing I thought after watching it was like, sometime, maybe some Halloween, I'd like to do The Black Cat as a double feature with The Body Snatcher. I don't know. I think that would be a good time.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I wish they were both in the public domain. I'd show them on the stream all the time,
right?
Back to back like that. Anyway.
Here might be a good point to help people with the transition of how did this talented set designer, brilliant director go from making a Universal monster movie to Poverty Row?
A successful Universal monster movie. It did very well. It was.
I think it was their biggest movie of that year.
Yeah, it did incredibly well. So this guy who worked with F.W. Murnau who is the genius behind Nosferatu. I mean, it's easy to see the influence there as well. How did this guy go from big budget Universal film to where he ended up? Hollywood, it holds grudges. Some of the people in power in classic Hollywood, and probably even now, hold grudges. And Ulmer had an affair with somebody related to the boss, to Uncle Carl Laemmle. And, well, you don't do that if you want to stay employed by Universal and not get blackballed.
Yeah. Shirley Kassler, who became Shirley Ulmer.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And they stayed together. I mean, after that, it was
their whole lives.
Yep. Had a kid.
Shirley Ulmer was the script supervisor on almost all his movies, including the two we're going to get to eventually here. But yeah, she was married to the nephew of Uncle Carl Laemmle. It was an ugly affair that turned public really fast. And after that, Ulmer was sort of blackballed.
Yeah.
But because of his talent, his perseverance, and determination, he went to Poverty Row and became the king of it, at least for a while.
He kept making his movies. And, again, I want to refer back, and I want to include a link in the show notes to that YouTube video that you sent me from the Q&A with his daughter. He had this drive to, I don't know if maybe it's extrapolating a little bit, exorcise certain demons from his childhood and his upbringing. He had a pretty rough childhood, living in what's now Czechoslovakia through World War I and all of that. You're dealing with that and then fleeing the country and being sent to live with somebody else and all of this other stuff. It's going to give you a pretty traumatic childhood from which you can draw some drama and need to tell stories to process some of that. I don't know how much of that really goes into making something like The Amazing Transparent Man, but he was driven to be a storyteller, and good for him. He found a way to do it, even if he didn't have Universal's budget anymore.
Yeah, well said. His daughter, Ariane Ulmer, has done a really good job of trying to preserve her father's legacy. I guess both of her parents' legacies. She's turned over, I think, her film collection to either the Academy or UCLA, one or the other. So a lot of his films are being preserved and saved, and future generations will be able to explore his works.
I didn't even know that this was a thing, but she runs the Edgar G. Ulmer Preservation Corp. So he goes off and he starts making these indie films and basically taking work wherever he can. But almost everything that I've seen of his is undeniably his, whether it's work for hire or not. He's able to inject into it a little bit of his own sensibilities as a storyteller. I said earlier, it kind of comes through like in Beyond the Time Barrier with all the geometric design in the set with the triangles and everything. were there on the location where they were shooting. Again, it was a happy accident. It was shooting at a former site of the Texas State Fair, and there were a number of buildings and structures that had that triangular shape. Well, he just kind of exploited and leaned into that, and they, to the point where even some of the screen wipes transitions are triangles. But it seems intentional because it's him.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that gets us to talking about the two movies of today, the exclusive roadshow attraction of The Invisible Intruder and The Last Barrier. At least those were the working titles. Most people will know these. Yeah, most people will know these movies as The Amazing Transparent Man and Beyond the Time Barrier. Originally slated to be made by Pacific International, which became Miller Consolidated Pictures. And the idea was to shoot both of these movies back to back in and around Dallas, Texas. Reports are that the budgets for each film were around $100,000. Barry was $125,000. The idea was to go to Texas to get around having to pay union rates.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of talent behind both of these pictures. A lot of the crew worked on both films. Not the actors, but the crews. From what I've found online, they were shot back to back in either April or December of 1959. They shared Ulmer, who did both. The cinematographer Meredith M. Nicholson worked on both films. He's known as one of the co-founders of Panavision, which is really amazing. He got pushed out after a few years. But he went on to do She-Demons, Frankenstein Daughter. Those are movies we monster kids would know. After that, he was prolific working in television, shooting MASH, Mork and Mindy, even Webster. So he had a long run. In fact, a lot of the people, as you and I have found before, that a lot of the people who end up working in low-budget films seem to make a turn later in life towards television, maybe for stability and some kind of retirement. But I feel like a lot of the crews that we've talked about on Bride of Monster Kid Radio, they end up finishing their careers doing tons of television that we saw as kids.
Right. Yeah, Ulmer, the cast and crews of these films, you could easily slot them into like a television western. Lead, for example, in Amazing Transparent Man, was a cowboy on television and did a lot of other things. It's one of the reasons why I like this guy, though, is he's got that kind of rugged vibe that you don't sometimes see in the mad science movies. Like, this is not the erudite, proper gentleman who got himself caught up in his own experiments. This is a bank robber, super blue collar, comes across as kind of rugged, ready to get down in a fist fight kind of thing, who ends up in a story with a Russian or a foreign mad scientist and some other people that just they would not hang out with at all normally. And they kind of push them together. And I really enjoy that juxtaposition with that film. With Beyond the Time Barrier, it's a little different. Robert Clark's in it, and it's kind of hard to say no to Robert Clark when it comes to a Robert Clark film. I love those films. Beth and I talked about The Hideous Sun Demon not too long ago on the show. Robert Clark, another one of these guys, he was an actor, but he wanted to do movies. He wanted to act. He wanted to perform. And he found ways to do it, even if it meant, quote unquote, slumming it in a movie that was shot in 6 days. Good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that I realized, I've watched this movie twice now. Okay. On second viewing, the thing that really made Transparent Man work for me is the fact that the whole cast feels like they would have been in a film noir.
Yeah.
You've got Douglas Kennedy with his mug, like very character actor, being the bank robber.
That's a great way to put it. With this mug. Yeah, that's him.
Yeah. with him being manipulated, this expert bank robber, into being a part of experiments to become invisible, to steal nuclear material for Major Paul Krenner, played by James Griffith. You also have Ivan Tresalt as Dr. Ulof, the scientist, who I think is really great. Yeah. Because he is so torn, like on a moral level, about his involvement in these experiments. And he also was like a ballet dancer. You'd never know it watching him play an old scientist.
Really?
But early in his life, yeah, professional ballet. You had Marguerite Chapman as Laura Matson. She's great. And she's one of those actresses that I think this was her last film, but she went on to do tons of television after.
Yeah.
And she started out as a model. She's very attractive, but also I think a very good actress. Both these movies, The Transparent Man and Beyond the Time Barrier, they start really well. Fast pace, shot out of a gun. They both end really well. In the middle, there's some issues, but the film noir cast in The Transparent Man really held it together for me. You mentioned Robert Clark in The Time Barrier, Beyond the Time Barrier. He's the star. He's also the producer of the movie. And that was sort of a tragic turn. He didn't make any money other than what he got for being paid to be a performer. When these movies were originally released by Miller Consolidated Pictures, the stories that I kept finding was it was going to be a state-by-state road show attraction. And it started in February of 1960 in the Pacific Northwest. I haven't been able to tie it down to if that means Washington or Oregon. I'm thinking Washington. During the release of these pictures, the Northwest got hit by a monstrous snowstorm. So nobody turned out for these movies. Oh. And Miller Consolidated Pictures was like such a small company that basically put them into bankruptcy. They couldn't afford to pay their lab bills. And American International Pictures swooped in, and for the price of the processing of the film for these two movies, was able to buy them. And so then they go on to re-release them as AIP Pictures in September of 1960 as a double feature. And they lived on, but poor Mr. Robert Clark, he didn't see a dime from his production effort.
Yeah.
And I had read that he originally wanted to direct Beyond the Time Barrier, but because of his experience directing The Hideous Sun Demon, he just thought it was too exhausting to be a star, a producer, and a director all at once. And having the chance to work with Ulmer was enough to convince him that he didn't need to direct this picture. He could just focus on his performance and producing it.
Sure. Well, and it's Ulmer, and I assume he was known during his time as being somebody who could pull this off.
Yeah,
I don't know what the contemporary reviews were like for him at the time, but he kept getting work. So, I mean, you wouldn't keep getting work if you weren't any good, I assume.
I think the reason that he had so much power and influence at PRC was the fact that he was effective at shooting a movie quickly, effectively, and turning a profit.
Yeah.
Like with these two movies that were shot in Texas, they didn't see any of the dailies while they were working on it. They would shoot the magazine of film and they would send it off to LA to get processed. And they wouldn't get it back in time, to see them anyway, because they only had 2 weeks. So he just kept working and kept shooting. And he had very capable people behind the camera. We've talked about Meredith M. Nicholson, the camera op, Jack McCloskey, who's done a ton of different things. And he just trusted that they got what they needed. And The Amazing Transparent Man is just about an hour long. Beyond the Time Barrier is like an hour 25. And, they both look well shot. It's amazing that they had enough trust and faith in their abilities to just shoot it and keep on moving, and that it would all be good when they got to the editing room.
It's one of the things that I love about Ulmer, I think, in terms of, his ability to know what he's getting and know what he's doing without needing to see the dailies all the time. I mean, sure, some of it was budgetary, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I'm sure most of it was budgetary, but that he was able to pull this off, in my mind, successfully, I think speaks volumes to the trust and communication on that crew.
Yeah, for sure. And he also worked with the same composer on both of these films as well. The editor was Jack Ruggiero, who'd done a few of his other films. But when it came to music, I really loved what Daryl Culker did here. He was a real B-movie maestro. He did Voodoo Woman, Forbidden Jungle, From Hell It Came, The Flying Saucer. And the music in both these films, they're both different. They both sound different. The Amazing Transparent Man, again, feels a little bit noirish with some classical in there. And then Beyond the Time Barrier, it has a lot of electronic music and is very sci-fi. So I was excited to learn about Daryl Culker, and I look forward to learning more.
Yeah, he's somebody that I don't know a lot about, but a lot of these types of movies, and the YouTube algorithm is now sending me links to Suite from The Amazing Transparent Man, Suite from whatever, and I'm not complaining because it's great music.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to complain at all. The guy was from back east, studied in Maryland, and again, like a lot of them, he ended up working on television or doing short films. Sometimes his music would get used as stock music in a lot of these things. But, I mean, after Beyond the Time Barrier, there wasn't a lot more that he did feature film-wise. A lot of his music ended up going to either shorts or TV cartoons in particular.
Yeah, and that's how he got his foot in the door. From what I read was that when he first got to Hollywood, he was kind of a session musician initially. And then Walter Lantz, who did animated shorts, picked him up for Andy Panda. And his work there and his reputation expanded to where he ended up composing, feature films.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to know more about this guy. Whenever we do this, I'm going to hold something up just for Matt. I know this isn't a video show, but whenever Matt and I do something like this, we seem like we find one or two guys that we want to know more about or learn more about. And if listeners remember the last time Matt and I did a show together not too long ago, we ended up talking about Gordon Zoller. Well, I got his book. I found the biography.
Wow.
Wheeling the Deal, The Outrageous Legend of Gordon Zoller, Hollywood's Flashiest Quadriplegic. Now, I've not read it yet, but it is signed by the author to somebody named Pat. May all your stars be quote unquote granted. Okay.
Hope you're doing well out there, Pat.
Yeah. Your early review was splendid and gave me hope. Thanks. So signed by Chip Jacobs. I haven't read it yet. I'm eager to get into it, but now I want to learn more about this Daryl Calker character as well. I wonder if there's a book out there about him I can pick up.
Yeah, I don't know. One thing I found really rewarding about going on these expeditions of exploring the stories behind some of these movies that have sort of been lost to time or maybe don't get a lot of credit. They get a lot made fun of a lot or they have mixed reviews. But there's obviously tons of people who, despite the limitations, poured their hearts into these things.
Yeah.
And they lived lives and did what they could to be a part of the Hollywood industry of making movies, for better or worse.
For sure. And that said, I also love running into old friends. And you got Jack Pierce on these movies. You got
for some of it.
Freaking Pierce working on these films. And Jack Pierce being the master of makeup for Universal, for Frankenstein, for Dracula, for the Wolfman, the Mummy, all of them. In the 30s and 40s, Jack Pierce is the man. And on the one hand, yeah, he kind of got booted from Universal because things change. And now he's working with much less money on an Ulmer quickie. But he's still working and he's still doing his thing. And I love it. This is probably not the first thing you think of when you think about Jack Pierce makeups. But good for him. And good for Ulmer and company for hiring him and giving him work and keeping him going,
Yeah, and his makeup work, especially at the end of Beyond the Time Barrier, to me looked like classic Pierce. Looked really, really good. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but there's a nice twist at the end, and the makeup's great. He didn't do all the makeup. Right. I guess he was very upset at the way that the mutants looked in Beyond the Time Barrier, because in that story, we have a pilot in 1960 with his experimental jet plane, and he breaks the time barrier and ends up in the future of 2024. And Robert Clark was the one that got them access and approval to work with the U.S. military to get on 2 air bases. One was the air base that we see him at and the jets and everything. And then there's another base that had been closed down and was defunct and was collapsing and in a state of disrepair. And that ends up being the base in the future when he touches down in 2024. And in this world of the future, in ways that reminded me of Planet of the Apes and 12 Monkeys.
Ooh.
You have different levels of strata and society living underground. There's been a cosmic plague that has turned lots of humanity into mutants. Their makeup is not great. It's not great, but you enjoy the imagination of the story and you go along for the ride. I know that Pierce was stunned by what they did there. I think that it would have been great if they would have had him do that, but time and money.
It's probably cheaper and easier to put a bunch of people in some bald caps and
And the other thing with the mutants that kind of bothered me too was the fact that AIP re-edited Beyond the Time Barrier. It was done with flashbacks originally. They took apart that structure, and then they added some additional footage to the movie of the mutants in caves. Anyhow, they were movies from 1940. I don't have it in front of me, but like when you see these shots added to the picture, the mutants have long hair and look like cavemen. But as soon as they come through the gate, they're all bald and in gray makeup. So they look completely different.
Would it be the Indian Tomb? Is that the one?
Oh, I think that's, yes.
Yeah.
Was it made in 1940 or released in 40?
59 was the Indian Tomb.
Okay. But yeah, they added a little bit of stuff there.
Yeah. Which, yeah, there's a couple of times actually in this movie when you can tell there's something being inserted, either by EIP or by and company. But again, you kind of have to just kind of go with the imagination and go for it and accept it.
Yeah. I think both these movies are great fun, and often the movies that, you and I talk about together.
Oh, yeah.
You enjoy the imagination and the ride and allow them to take you on an adventure without overthinking it.
Yep.
And Time Barrier was written by Arthur C. Pierce.
Another old friend
who we
at this point.
Right? We talked about him with The Human Duplicators and Mutiny in Outer Space, that double feature that he wrote.
Yep.
Also, Roger George is back for the special effects for these two films. He also went on to make Human Duplicators and Mutiny in Space.
That wasn't necessarily planned. That was just an accident. But again, we get to hang out with Arthur C. Pierce, another guy I want to know more about.
Yeah, for sure. He seems like he had a really good grasp on science fiction of his time.
Yeah. Well, you had gone on to watch some of his other stuff, hadn't you? Like Cyborg 2087 and all that?
Cyborg 2087 is amazing.
Yeah?
Have you seen it yet?
I still have. I need to sit down too.
It's so good. And it's got such a fun mix of ideas and locations. It's worth an episode by itself, I think.
Oh, okay.
It's also one of those movies that when you watch it, you're like, I wonder if James Cameron saw this one. Because there's a lot there that feels like The Terminator.
There's a lot in Beyond the Time Barrier that feels like other movies you brought up.
Right.
Planet of the Apes movies. It's got these weird mutant things. And this is brought up on the Internet Movie Database. I don't know how much I see Night of the Living Dead in the mutants and all that. But you see a lot happening in this movie that may have influenced other people down the line. I mean, everything is a remix anyway, but still, there's a lot of like the Planet of the Apes stuff going on here. Even the opening credits feel like a Star Wars thing, but then that also could be like from a Flash Gordon influence previously. I don't know. There's a lot of things happening in this movie that seem to either predate or exist concurrently in pop culture. There's a lot of time machine in this.
That's true.
Of the time machine in this. And, if it works, it works. I mean, it happens today in Hollywood where you've got similar movies coming out. There have been 2 movies about Steve Jobs, for crying out loud. You got Dante's Peak and Volcano coming out around the same time. You've got The Abyss, Leviathan, and a bunch of other Deep Star 6 coming out around the same time. So you've got that happening as well. And I'm not saying that this movie tried to rip off the time machine, but concurrent development does happen in the world of art.
And I also think that even to this day where we see, I don't want to say knockoffs, where you see low budget movies that are similar to what's in the theaters and streaming right now. It's hot.
Mockbusters.
Yeah, mockbusters.
Yep.
And I think that's been a tradition that's been around a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure that was the case when they released The Time Barrier. They were happy to cash in on the success of The Time Machine, which is a brilliant movie that went gangbusters. Any way you could convince people that, here's another through time adventure, why not?
Well, and you almost had the lead woman in this movie being from the Time Machine cast.
Oh, Darian Tompkins?
Yvette Mimieux.
Oh, she was up for the part?
She was up for Tyrene, yeah.
Wow.
So you almost had that too.
Yeah, Darlene Tompkins, who plays Tyrene, is great. The children in the future most of them are mute, deaf, and sterile. She's not sterile, but she is mute. And she emotes really well her emotions without the ability to communicate. She's also a telepath. Did a good job. Again, I feel like they did a good job casting these movies with people that were interesting. A lot of character actors, not known names, but people who were capable. And I think that there's a specific talent to taking sci-fi material, especially in the 50s and 60s, and delivering it straight by not finding it awkward or hilarious. And all the people succeed in these 2 movies.
That's what I find endearing about a lot of these movies, that they are trying so hard to play it straight. Sometimes it comes off as a little overly sincere, sure. But
True.
in these movies in particular, they are playing it straight. And that makes it easier, I feel like, to kind of get invested in the story instead of just kind of like chuckle at it. And I appreciate that quite a bit, so much so that that's the preference that I have when people try to make these retro B movies now. When you've got somebody like a Josh Kennedy or a Christopher R. Mim, where they are playing it straight. Yeah, there might be some jokes here and there, but they're not trying to laugh it up or yuck it up the way, say, I'm not going to put anybody on blast, but there are other, popular filmmakers that have done send-ups of these movies and try to point out all the funny ha-ha moments or whatever and not playing it straight. I want it to be played straight because they become more exciting to me that way. I get more out of it. They feel like adventures and quests that I want to go on, as opposed to just having this momentary laugh. And Beyond the Time Barrier, I think, tries so hard to rise above its material and succeeds. It's less than an hour long, and I don't want it to be any longer to explain those stories, but there's stuff going on behind the scenes or just off camera, or maybe even right before the movie started, that tell you that this is a lived-in world. These are characters that existed before the cameras rolled. And I think that's what makes this movie one of my favorites when it comes to low-budget, public domain, 1960s genre films. I've said repeatedly to people, and I don't know if I've said it here on the show, if I ever became a horror host, a proper horror host, like a Dr. Gain Green or somebody along those lines, the first movie I'd do would be The Amazing Transparent Man. Because I love this movie so much.
I know that you brought it up after I had my Ulmer revelation, being a born-again Ulmer. When was the first time that you'd seen The Amazing Transparent Man?
It was sometime within the past 15 years. I didn't see it. It would be since I started Monster Kid Radio. It was on a collection of 50 movies. There's one of those 50 packs that, what's the name of the company that does that? Oh, why am I drawing a blank? But yeah, the company that would do the 50 packs of movies, like film noir movies or horror movies or shilling or shockers or whatever. What was the name of that company? Why am I drawing a blank on this, Matt? Mill Creek, that's it. It was on a Mill Creek set. So I saw it that way, which means it was crammed onto a DVD with 3 other movies, because they would always release a 50-pack or a 20-pack or whatever, and there'd be like 4 or 5 titles per disc, which means the picture wasn't the greatest. Unfortunately, I have got a much better picture in the subsequent years for that. I would like to find a really nice copy of it. A nice transfer would be great. Whatever. But yeah, I would have seen it that way. I couldn't tell you exactly when or where, but I was exploring one of those sets, saw it, and just fell in love with it.
Cool.
As far as Beyond the Time Barrier, I don't know. I couldn't. It didn't have as big of an impact on me as Transparent Man, so I don't have the memories of exactly how or when I saw it. I'm sure it was on some sort of compilation or collection as well. But these were new watches for you, right?
Yes, they were both new watches for me. I caught them both on Tubi, so you have commercials. They both looked like standard definition. Neither were HD scans. Arian Ulmer, we love you. If you're out there and you have these films in your collection, talk to somebody. Get these put on Blu-ray. Let's see these things in high definition so we can really see your dad's work. So yeah, they were both clean but standard def. The audio was great, so that helped. Also, I love the posters and the artwork that AIP did for these films. Like, both were really captivating. When I saw the poster for Transparent Man, it was like, I don't know, it kind of reminded me of 4D Man a little bit. And Beyond the Time Barrier has that very, I'd say sort of ahead of its time for 1960, the sci-fi poster that it has. I think it was a few years ahead of itself. Granted, all these movies, a lot of them had better posters than they were visually as films sometimes because of budget. But I think both of these films lived up to their posters. I like them both. But yeah, first time watches for both. And like I said before, I love how fast they start. The Amazing Transparent Man starts with our main guy breaking out of jail, a jailbreak, and then trying to get away from the police. And he gets picked up in another thing that's in both movies, in a 1959 Buick Invicta convertible. There was only about 5,000 of those made, and they got that in both of these pictures. But anyway, after he meets up with the lady and they drive through a roadblock, which I don't know if it was an influence, but When I saw it, I instantly thought of Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah?
It did for me. It did for me.
I could see that. Totally could see that. Wow.
And I also love the fact that like you had this mix of very interesting characters, not in some industrial park lab, but like in a farmhouse that was secretly a lab.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I found really interesting about The Transparent Man was that it was written by Jack Lewis, who served honorably in the Marine Corps in World War II. And even in his older years, like he kept coming out of retirement. He went to Korea. I found it really fascinating. Like, I guess he was an advisor on a lot of different war movies. He was also a journalist, published a magazine called Gun World.
Oh.
I found it very fascinating that this guy who had such a strong military background made his villain an ex-U.S. Army major who was manipulating everyone and working to try to make an invisible army that he could use to take over the world. Like, it's just really fascinating to have because like, I don't think it's a leap for most creatives who want to have a villain. It's fun to have someone with military history who goes bonkers, but to have a guy who served so much, to have a major be the bad guy, I don't know. It seemed interesting, really compelling.
It is an interesting choice. You're right, especially knowing his background. Now, I'm trying to
Yeah,
find anything
and
out.
James Griffith as Major Krenner was great because he doesn't look imposing, but the way that he plays the scenes to manipulate everyone to get what he wants, he's a really good villain. And if you're looking for something with an intelligent villain that uses and manipulates people to get what they want, this is a movie I would highly recommend.
It's really good. And again, to go back to the characters and all that, I don't know why, but every time I watch it, I am struck by the person that he leaves in charge to kind of guard everything. That's being manipulated there as well. Something about his daughter, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Julian, played by Boyd Red Morgan.
Who was one of the stuntmen of the movie.
And he's such a good actor.
Yeah.
Like, he plays the tough guy to a T.
I want to know more about that. What is Krenner holding over his head? But what is going on here? I want to know more about this. And again, this is the performances and the story. In fact, and I know I'm not the only person who does this, I would write a novelization of The Amazing Transparent Man just so I could explore that a little bit more. Just so I could maybe figure out for myself, what is he holding over all of these people? Some of it we know, but not all of it. And I want to know what that is. I want to explore that more because he really is a great villain.
Well, and also like his backstory of what led him to the discovery of invisibility and the scientists working on it. Was he a part of getting the scientist out of Europe during World War II to the United States?
Ooh.
Did he try to keep him off the books of the government for his own bidding? There's so many things that, like, on first watch I didn't pick up on, but watching it again, like, all these thoughts were dawning on me. Like, okay, yeah, what does he have over Julian? What does he have over everybody?
Right.
No, it's really exciting. I wish the pacing was a little bit better in the middle of the movie a little bit.
It does have some pace, and I wonder if part of it is because it was so truncated in terms of its production.
I also think that that's probably why we didn't get more cuts or imaginative shots of some of the equipment. The special effects are good. Everything's pretty much shot at standing eye level, which is fine. And we knew that they were in a hurry. When you read all the people that were involved with the making of these movies, and you just read like a synopsis of what they're about, like, it's all quality stuff and it's all very compelling. And it makes you wonder what these films would have been if they had more time and money. Because I think they're good as they are, but they could have been really incredible. And The Transparent Man, especially when I watched it the second time, I was like, why hasn't this movie been reinterpreted? Why hasn't this been made? There's so much here that seems relevant and compelling and interesting character work, especially for a movie under an hour.
Yeah. There's a lot going on here. I mean, there could be some really cool stuff happening here. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what. Part of it, I think, is the studio, maybe, the studio issues they had.
Yeah.
Not being able to afford, and I'm glad somebody was able to pick it up and bring it bring it to light. This is not the only time this has happened. Ed Wood's Night of the Ghouls, sat at a lab forever because he couldn't afford or whatever to pick it up, and it didn't become a thing until much later when somebody finally realized, oh, hey, the lab's got this. I'm going to go pay for it now. So there's that to consider as well. But yeah, I mean, it's just so cool. It's easy for me to kind of fanboy about something like this and then kind of get caught up in how much I love this movie versus really talking about the issues and all that. And yeah, there are some problems with the pacing, like you said, but I don't care, man.
Like, one thing I like about the conversations we have is I hope that we bring these movies to more people, and we let other people know that about the people behind the scenes who made these films, despite hell or high water, tiny budgets and tiny calendars. I think it's up to all of us fans to tell everybody, like, if you find something that you love, regardless of its provenance, tell us about it, please.
Yeah.
I think all of us are hungry for stuff that's original or new to us.
Yeah. Especially now with how things are with entertainment and all that. Before Beth and I started recording, we were talking about, Beth and I went to go see Project Hail Mary. And while we had a grand time at it, you look at the theater offerings now and so much of it is, and it's cliche to say, sequels and remakes and all this other stuff, right? So when there's something out there that really kind of sparks our imagination like this, which sure wouldn't have existed without The Invisible Man and all that. So maybe it does wear its influence on us, Steve, and maybe it's not as original as I'd like to think it is. Darn it, it's so cool.
Yeah. And on the note of Invisible Man, I love the original film. I just read the book. I love the concept of the world being revealed to someone who can't be seen and what they get to do. And I think that this movie, although I wish that it had more invisible time in it of our transparent man doing things, it definitely clicks into, kind of the responsibilities and also the abuses that you can have when invisible. One thing that I thought was marvelous in this movie, being low budget, is every actor who gets attacked, assaulted, punched, choked by our transparent bank robber, man, they sell it.
Yeah.
Dude, some people take some serious falls, and they really take a punch, an invisible punch, by themselves on camera. Like, when I'm watching it, I'm like, how many takes did that take? Because it looks great. They really sell it. I really like that.
Yeah. It looks fantastic. And maybe it's again, one of these cliche things to say or obvious or on the nose things to say. The Invisible Man movies feel very proper. Yeah, sure. As they go along, there's Americans involved in that sort of thing, but it feels very British, very, I don't know, like a proper and scientist and all that. And you've got this movie coming along, shot in Texas with a cowboy actor and, a stuntman and not much money. And it's about somebody who wants to rob a bank versus The Invisible Man, where he's like, I'm just going to take over the world. It's an American approach, I guess, to the situation.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that we get to see that take or that approach in this.
And I think that worked really well in the sense that our bank robber, like you said, even before the movie starts, that he has a history and an experience. And once he's invisible, he's still a thinking man making his own plans and plot. And the way that he goes back at the major, demanding more money for the effort, was a great twist.
Yeah.
And I think that was a little bit more complex and more advanced than I kind of expected, sight unseen with this movie.
Yeah.
So there were some good surprises there. I do think the acting is much stronger in Transparent Man than Beyond the Time Barrier.
I do too. And I wonder if some of it has to do with us not getting a chance to hear so many of the characters.
Right.
In Beyond the Time Barrier. It was a choice made, and I don't know why the choice was made. I don't know if it was something that was decided by the writer, if it was something that was added later. I don't know. But yeah, I agree with you in terms of like the acting.
Yeah, and with Beyond the Time Barrier, you talked about it somewhat, is the fact that, it was shot at the fairgrounds in Texas. And I've seen mixed reports. Some were saying that a lot of the triangles and stuff was stuff that was left over from the 30s from a display. And then I've read other places where they've built triangles. And I'm guessing there's a combination, that they took advantage of what was there and added what they needed to complete the sets to make it look like the future. Pierce originally had written it to be in caves, before they had the opportunity to take advantage of what was there at the fairgrounds. And
Okay.
even though it's low budget, the upside down triangles and everything, I think was sort of retro futurism that worked for me. Like,
Yeah.
it kind of gave it some production value that they couldn't afford, that you weren't seeing in anything else. And I know that like some people rip on the triangle transitions of wipes.
I thought it was great.
I think it's great now. Like maybe at the time it seemed dated, like a throwback to earlier sci-fi, but now, based on the material and the performances and everything, I loved it.
Yeah. No, I thought it worked. I thought for what it is, especially since we're kind of carrying from the triangular motif from everything else, that, it was it intentional? Was it a happy accident? I don't know. I don't care. It works.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes you end up with something awesome like that. So good for them. Of the two, Transparent Man's my favorite of the two. And someday maybe I will sit down and try to do a novelization of it. I don't know. I've got too many things that I keep saying I need to write and haven't yet. So, but it's great. It's awesome. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. And if I ever do the horror host thing, I will start with this movie.
I'm there. Sounds good to me.
Good stuff, man. And completely accidental that we ended up doing another double feature, which I know is kind of our thing now. I was eager just to talk about Amazing Transparent Man. I'm glad we did both. Especially since, again, they were kind of an ad hoc double feature at one point. Time, same place.
I don't think that you and I need to necessarily do double features, but it's sure been a heck of a lot of fun. And the fact that as soon as I started looking into The Amazing Transparent Man and seeing all the similarities between these two films, as far as crew and shooting them back to back and both being Ulmer films, I felt like there was no way we could talk about one without the other. Like they're two sides of the same Ulmer coin.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know what the Edgar Ulmer Corp is doing now, the Preservation Corp. I was trying to find some information, a website, anything, and just didn't have a lot of luck. But if they are doing anything at all, I hope one of those things is supporting the development and release and remastering of some of these movies, because I think they would both look really cool in a high-def restoration if they're available that way. If prints, if negatives still exist, I would love to get my hands on something like this. It's like a high-def restoration, a Blu-ray, I don't care.
Really trying to promote her dad's work. There's a lot of different times where she's done interviews at conventions and different events. You guys can track those down and listen to her tell about her father. Sounds like he was a real character, not only super intelligent and sort of a genius that made the most of what he was working with. There's a book out that she worked with called Edgar G. Ulmer, A Filmmaker at the Margins by Noah Eisenberg. And she was open to a lot of letting Mr. Eisenberg have access to a lot of papers and talking to her. And that's a book I haven't looked at, but it's definitely one that I've listened to a little bit of conversation about. And it's one that I look forward to finding.
Okay, so I just did a touch more research while we were sitting here just a second ago. Kino Lorber did release a Blu-ray, the Edgar G. Ulmer Sci-Fi Collection. It's got 3 movies on it: The Amazing Transparent Man, Beyond the Time Barrier, and The Man from Planet X. They say the masters for Beyond the Time Barrier and The Amazing Transparent Man are 2K masters.
Sweet.
And it is packed full of audio commentaries. Man from Planet X has 3 of them, 2 that were previously released, and then a brand new one. Beyond the Time Barrier has a commentary from Gary D. Rhodes, who is somebody that if you read a lot of stuff, especially about Lugosi, you're going to know that name. He's written a lot of Lugosi's biographies. David Schechter, who is the man behind Monstrous Music and released a lot of soundtracks that we wouldn't have otherwise, and Tom Weaver, who is a historian as well. And then The Amazing Transparent Man has a new commentary from David Dell, who is also a Monster Kid historian and somebody that is active in the community today.
And the third movie you said was The Man from Planet X?
Yep.
Which is a wonderful film. Happy 75th anniversary to The Man from Planet X.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great collection.
Yeah, some of the commentaries on there from previous releases include Joe Dante. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and he's one of us for sure.
Yeah.
He's one of us for sure. Well, I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes over at monsterkidradio.net if you want to pick up this Blu-ray collection. So I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes for that. So if you do pick it up using the link in the show notes, because we're an Amazon affiliate, we get like a penny or two off the top of that. Helps us out. So I appreciate you doing that. And yeah, we'll go from that to just reminding everybody that twitch.tv/Monster Kid Radio is currently running 8.5 hours of Vincent Price goodness. We're showing things like The Bat, The House on Haunted Hill, Last Man on Earth, as well as his documentary about Dracula, where he's the narrator on that, a TV episode of Robert Montgomery Presents. I'm sure Matt will be on the show again in the future. Yeah?
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe in the far future of 2024, if we can survive the cosmic plague.
Maybe. We'll have to do our best. We might, as long as we don't end up mute, we'll be okay. We'll be able to keep the show going.
Yeah, deaf, mute, and sterile. We'll try to avoid that. Not that either one of us have any need for that at this point, but I'm just saying. This got weird. Matt, take us home.
Well, folks, this has been a treat. If you end up transparent or going beyond the time barrier, please call in to Bride of Monster Kid Radio and tell us about your experience. That, or if you love Edgar G. Ulmer, tell us what movies you love, which ones you like. I know we're talking sci-fi here, but he did a lot of great noir, too.
Detour is fantastic. Detour is amazing. And that one's in the public domain, and I have shown that on the stream before when I've done film noir nights. Contact us if you have any thoughts about Edgar G. Ulmer, monsterkidradio@gmail.com, or you can call and leave us a voicemail at 360-524-2484. That's available over at monsterkidradio.net. Matt, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, and thank you for having me. This is always a treat.
Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for being here. Thanks for tuning in, checking it out, streaming, downloading, watching, using your interocitor to intercept the signals. I just appreciate you being here and being part of the Bride of Monster Kid Radio community. Of course, I doubly appreciate you if you post the show, repost, reshare, put it on X, Blue Sky, Reddit, wherever it is you're active online with social media. It would be awesome if you helped to boost the signal just a little bit, just because we want to grow the audience and really kind of make this show even bigger, get the audience even bigger, and it might even help us when we are pitching panels to various conventions. I've not heard back from Terror Trader and their Gathering of the Ghouls convention just yet, but I'm hopeful. Fingers and tentacles crossed. I'm hoping that Beth and I get to do a panel there. And really, if there's any conventions, any panels, online or in person-ish, close enough for us to get to, and you're looking for some panelists, I'm here, man. I got you. Just, I'm here. And if you are trying to get us some attention, you can always send people to our website at monsterkidradio.net. This is where you're going to find the show notes for this episode, as well as links to everything that we've talked about, including that Amazon affiliate link if you want to pick up the Edgar G. Ulmer Sci-Fi Collection Blu-ray for yourself. It's only $19.99. You get 3 movies, like 5 or 6 commentary tracks. How cool is that? And if you pick it up for yourself, like I said earlier, we get a penny or two off the top, and it helps us out. In fact, if you use the Amazon affiliate button on our website to buy anything on Amazon, it helps us out. So we really appreciate that. You're also going to find links to all of our social media outlets and our contact information. monsterkidradio@gmail.com is the email address. The voicemail line where you can call and leave a voicemail about this episode or anything you've heard about in the past, 360-524-2484. I did put the call out after last week's episode and some places online asking you to contact us about your favorite Vincent Price film, because we did do a Vincent Price film last week when we talked about Theater of Blood, which is still available. You can check that out now. The podcasts are never going to go away. But we haven't gotten a lot of feedback on that yet, so I'd love to hear from you about what your favorite Vincent Price movies are. I'd love to hear what you think about Edgar G. Ulmer. I'd love to hear from you about anything. And really, I've got some feedback that did come in about some other things, and I'll talk about that next week on the show. How do you find out what's coming up on the show next week? Well, you got to follow us over on Patreon as a free member. This is the only place when I go online and do my social media blitz and repost the show notes everywhere. This is the only place where I post what's coming on the next episode of the show. So if you want to be ahead of the curve, if you want to know what's coming, if you want to be one of the cool kids, you got to follow us for free over on Patreon. Of course, you can always throw us a little bit of scratch too. That helps us out. And, really every little bit helps. We're kind of getting to a time of year right now where things are getting a little tight. And yeah, we could really use the help in terms of just keeping the show going, and your support helps make that happen. So thank you very much. And as I mentioned in the conversation with Matt, twitch.tv/MonsterKidRadio, I've got an 8.5-hour loop of Vincent Price movies, commercials, documentaries, and PSAs playing right now. It's pretty fun. I had a lot of fun putting this one together. You know, you've got some of your old standbys, your classic Vincent Price public domain movies, like House on Haunted Hill or Last Man on Earth. But I also found a few other things that I don't think get a lot of attention when it comes to Vincent Price. And I challenge you, I challenge you to find any stream anywhere online where somebody has taken an old Dairy Council commercial in which Vincent Price is telling you the benefits of using real sour cream and looking for the real label, and then enhance the audio and the video to try to make it look more crisp and clear than it did when it originally was broadcast on your old school, well, okay, maybe 80s televisions. I challenge you to find anybody who is crazy enough, silly enough, wasting enough time, okay, maybe not the last part because it was fun for me to do, to go in and clean up the audio and enhance the video a little bit and try to bring things into a more sharp picture. I can guarantee you, nobody on the face of the earth has done this. And the only place you're going to see it is on this stream, as well as a number of classic trailers for Vincent Price films. I've got the stream playing in the background right now. As of this exact moment, we're seeing a trailer for The Return of the Fly on the stream. Of course, by the time you tune in over at twitch.tv/MonsterKidRadio, it might be something else. So go check that out. It's free. There is a chat. You know, not a lot of people chat it up over there, but that's okay. If you want to chat it up, feel free. It's the only time I'm going to encourage you to talk during the movies. Bride of Monster Kid Radio is a Team Death production. All original content of Bride of Monster Kid Radio is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 Unported license. You can learn more about Team Death, our other projects like Death Designs, Mail Order Zombie, the Team Death YouTube channel, and more at www.teamdeath.com. Remember, death is spelled D-E-T-H. All previous episodes of this podcast, as well as the original Monster Kid Radio podcast, are available at www.monsterkidradio.net. Please rate and review Bride of Monster Kid Radio wherever you download your favorite podcasts. Punishing the Atoms is copyright 2023 Los Twangheads. You can find it on their album, The Dark Surf Experience. You can check that out over at lostwangheads.bandcamp.com, or look them up on Instagram or Facebook, or just follow the links in the show notes over at monsterkidradio.net. However you check them out, however you visit their website and listen to their music, make sure that you let them know that you heard about them here on Bride of Monster Kid Radio. My name's Derek M. Cook. I'll talk to everybody next week. Ciao.
I think that your problem may lie in the properties of the hammer.
Interesting theory. May I keep it for study? You're not going to play with it or anything.
No, I won't.
Okay. Of my body, so that they will mix and rearrange and fit exactly all the holes in that wall.